Okay, while many colleges are making big cuts, a few opt for permanent transformation. This is an article by John Marcus of the Hechinger Report. So I'm going to preview this by saying that it starts with this scenario that more than two-thirds of college and university presidents say that they say long-term financial viability of their institutions is their most pressing concern. And this is because of declines in enrollment, they estimate that $120 billion have been lost by colleges and universities in the United States over the last year. That there have been 560,200 fewer undergraduates in colleges and universities, and that many colleges are facing massive cuts in their staffing and their educational programs. But what this article talks about is how three or four colleges are making huge changes in order to actually take advantage of this crisis and turn it into an opportunity. So, Mark, I'm going to want to do college by college, and I'll mention one college, and then we'll talk about what they're doing, and we'll go to the next. Sounds good?
Yeah, let's do that. Before you do that, let me just add a little bit more texture to what you add. I think you set it up nicely. But here's a quote from the article. More than two-thirds of college and university presidents say the long-term financial viability of their institution is now among their most pressing concerns. And that's a survey by the American Council of Education, which is the same organization that came up with the figure that $120 billion has already been lost due to COVID and counting. And then it gives some examples of some of the cuts that have had to be made. So here are a few. George Washington has already laid off 339 employees. Marquette plans on shedding at least 225 faculty and staff. Remember, we've said this before, but salaries and benefits of faculty, staff, and administration is the big line item in any school's budget. So if you're having financial problems, that's the first place you go. University of Evansville in Indiana is proposing to eliminate 17 majors, including its entire philosophy, religion, music, and electrical engineering and computer science departments, and getting rid of 35 faculty positions. It recently announced that in an email. And the University of Vermont is proposing shutting down its classics and its geology departments, as well as 27 majors, minors, and other programs. So that's just a little sense of the pain that people are feeling out there. But this is actually a positive article, Dave, I think, don't you?
This article talks about 6 colleges: Unity College of Maine, Metropolitan State of Denver, Parsons School of Design, and NYU Tisch School of Affairs in New York, Emerson, and Willamette. So let us talk first about Unity College in Maine.
Yeah, hey, Dave, before you do, I just want to say what these schools have done in general. So what they've done, which is so great, is they have bought into the axiom, which is fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. In other words, okay, I got caught with my pants down with this pandemic. But guess what? I'm not just going to go on as business as usual, because if it can happen once, it can happen again. So in order to prepare so that we don't have the financial angst, pain, and trepidation that we've had this time, we're going to completely re-engineer our whole operation so that we're prepared for the new world. So I just wanted to set that stage, and then we can get into what the different schools are doing.
Great. Well, Unity College of Maine decided that they were going to revise their academic calendar. They were going to alter online and in-person education and move away from 2 semesters per year to 8 5-week terms. And a student will be able to take 1 or 2 courses at a time, in person or online. And instead of paying all their tuition up front for the year, they will be able to pay on a semester by semester basis. So it's a lot more flexible. But the big issue is they had a very significant price decrease from over $1,255 per credit hour to less than $550 per credit hour. So what did this result in? The biggest ever entering class And Unity College, because of this, was able to add 3 new bachelor programs. What's your thoughts on Unity, Mark?
I think it's exciting because, a lot of times education can be staid and it can be stagnant and it can be just so bound by past tradition that it's not always innovative. And what you're seeing with these schools is almost like a Silicon Valley type level of innovation, even if it means a complete revamping of everything that they're doing. And if they do it effectively, like Unity's clearly doing here, if you scratch where people itch, then you'll get results. And what we're seeing in a lot of these is very successful moves. Now, some of them are still happening and the verdict's out, but some of them are already seen are bearing fruit. So, I mean, Unity's a very, very small little school with, fantastic environmental studies program, but we already know the demographics are really, really tough in the Northeast for schools that either don't have large endowments, are not centrally located in metropolitan areas, or do not have household names. Maybe a year or two ago, Dave, we ran an article on that. It was an Inside Higher Ed article. It said, if you, those are the three things. If you have all three of them, then you're booming. If you have an urban location, brand awareness in the marketplace, and a large endowment, then you're selling right now. And that's why you see, success for a number of schools. There are a number of Boston schools that are doing extremely well. But it says every time you take away one of those three things, it's a risk factor. So if you move to, the hinterlands and now you're not in an urban location, much more challenging. Low endowment and much more challenging. If you don't have any of those three, you're likely not going to survive without a complete revamping. And some of these schools see the writing on the wall and they're doing some creative things. I love it.
That's right. So let's talk about Metropolitan State University of Denver.
Yeah.
And they had an innovation pro. They created what they called a skills lab. And this was to quickly retrain people who had lost their jobs in the pandemic. And here's the key with this skills lab. It was no charge. And the demand was so great that they started a program which they thought was going to be temporary and made it permanent. So the question is, why would they do it at no charge? Because they found that the skills lab is helping them to steer people into other paying credential programs. What's your thoughts about Metropolitan State, Mark?
I think it's brilliant. It's once again, it's the ability to look at the market, say, what is the need? We refuse to believe that there's no longer a need for education. Education is value. If we're not having people sign up, it's not because people don't value education. It's because we're not serving it to them in the way they want to. It'd be like, nobody's coming to my restaurant. Okay, well, I'm not going to conclude that people have decided they don't want to eat anymore. I need to do something different. Do we need to change our menu? Do we need better signage? Our customer service, team, waiters, waitresses, are they not friendly? We need to look at everything and find out. But instead of saying we're just going to close, or instead of saying people don't want to eat anymore, they say, no, people do want to eat. We just have to find a way of showing them that we have a solution to their hunger needs. And that's what I'm seeing happen with these. And why not go to a skills lab? I mean, what a great way to help people improve their skills and either get jobs or, get pay raises because they have enhanced skills. So I thought what, Metropolitan State University in Denver did was brilliant. By the way, my brother Norm from Denver, who's staying with us right now in Atlanta, his son and my nephew Alex is a student in Metropolitan State in Denver. And one of the reasons he selected Metropolitan State was some of the innovative things they're doing. There's a quote after this that I loved. It says this: "The pandemic is a complete opportunity to try ideas like this," says Terry Bauer, the university's associate vice president of innovative and lifelong learning. She and her fellow innovation specialists have never been as popular as we are now because everybody realizes the old model doesn't work. And then she says, there will be dinosaurs who won't change. So I just want to throw that in there.
And now let's go to New York City, where they highlighted 2 schools: Parsons School of Design, the alma mater of my little sister, and NYU Tisch School of Arts. And just to give a little background, My sister started as a very successful fashion designer, worked for Liz Claiborne. She headed up Robert Redford's design studio, Sundance, out of Utah for a couple of years. But then she transitioned into real estate because essentially design and clothing manufacture almost entirely left the United States and is now produced in other places. And so they had to adapt. So recognizing this, Parsons School of Design and Tisch School has begun these survey courses in film and TV essentials and in the business of fashion. And these are shorter online versions of full-fledged courses that not only produce revenue for the universities, but it also gives students the opportunity to have these certificate programs. And Mark, you can explain what more of these certificate programs are. They're not full-fledged degrees, and from these certificate programs, the students can transition into more full-time studies. So, why don't you give us a sense of what that is, Mark?
Yeah, certificates are booming right now. They're abridged versions of getting education in shorter doses. And they can be a few months to a year. But they tend to be very, very in tune with the skills that the market needs. So they're usually developed by looking at employers who are saying, what skills are your employees not having that you need? So let's say it's, well, I need more help with coding. Okay, then let's create a coding certificate. And there's, hundreds and hundreds of them that become very, very popular. Initially, they actually weren't embraced by your four-year universities. They were, adjuncts that were providing them, but it became so popular that universities are co-opting them and now offering these certificate programs. But just back to, what Dave was saying about Kim, who shout out, she just had her 53rd birthday not that recently. Got to say shout out to Kim. Dave and I were on a call with Kim. What was that, Dave? Was that our Christmas call, New Year's call? It was very
Christmas, yes.
Yeah, it was right around then. And she was going into detail about this on the call. She's like, I don't know what's going to happen at Parsons because what they were doing when I was there, there's just not a market for it anymore. It's completely dried up. And I mean, that was, it was in the last couple of weeks. I think it was actually even more recent than that because it was after, maybe after your dad passed, we were talking, but it's the timing of her saying that to us recently. And then here you go, Parsons realizing, okay, we need to do something. Let's partner with Tisch. And then it says right here, just to once again to show the success, it says 5 more of these courses are going to be added in the spring.
Yep.
So clearly it's resonating.
And you can definitely see Parsons deciding, look, we have to go from designing clothing to designing something. Here's TV, here's film. I'm sure they'll branch out into the internet. So they're transforming their school to meet the technological change that's happening before their eyes. So, and the job market.
Well, the other thing they're doing, which I'm a huge fan of, it's basically what's called content marketing. And what that is, they're letting people try something for either free or a greatly reduced cost. And that brings a lot of people in initially. And then once they see what you offer and they see the value, they're willing to pay more for it. It's basic content marketing. It's what happens when someone puts a webinar on. But content marketing is a great way. The old marketing approach was, come out and cold call people, knock on their door, telemarket, do all that stuff, and expect people to make a commitment before they have an understanding of what you do. But this is the modern way. The modern best approach is this is anybody out there. I'm telling you, you're a realtor, you're a salesperson, put on free workshops, put on free seminars, put on, let people get a comfort level with who you are. Don't charge them, low barrier of entry. If they like what they hear, they feel confident with you, they're likely to take the next step. So a number of these approaches are using forms of content marketing, which is an incredibly effective way. And it's not something that really was, that popular 20 years ago.
Yep. And then lastly, I'll talk about Emerson. You can talk about the fifth college.
Sure.
Emerson completed a takeover of Marlborough College, a small liberal arts college. And because of that, they were able to expand their liberal arts offering. So they went in a different direction and not necessarily so technological, but said we are going to expand the amount of liberal arts offerings for our students. And that has also been very successful.
Yeah, because, a lot of times if you've got a school that's just about to close and they don't really want to close, it's no different. I'll use real estate because that's Dave's world. You've got someone that's about to lose everything, go to foreclosure, get something rather than get nothing. Sometimes there can be some colleges that are really right there for the takeover because they're floundering so badly that you can add them to what you offer at a reasonable cost.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Willamette in Salem, Oregon. And so it recently closed on its acquisition of the Pacific Northwest College of Art. They picked up all the art schools programs. They picked up their students. They picked up their Portland campus. They picked up their faculty. And it's just 45 miles north of Willamette where it's located. They will now consolidate several of their offerings, including business offerings and data science offerings. So now Willamette students will be able to take art courses, and incoming art students can enroll in Willamette in things like computer science and arts management. And, Georgia actually led the nation, Dave, in these kinds of mergers. There's a number of them that happened. You had Armstrong State University, which merged with Georgia Southern. One of the really, really big ones was Kennesaw State engulfing Southern Polytech, which was a big engineering school. And it just engulfed it, added it to its campus. And now Kennesaw State offers some of the most engineering offerings in the state because they engulfed a technical school. And so I know this is a really positive article, and I'm very encouraged by this. And, it just kind of shows, like, if you're smart and you sit back and you really look and you figure out what are the needs of the marketplace, you can come up with something that appeals to them. It's not, like I said before, it's not like people are giving up on education. But if somebody's thirsty and they want a drink and you come up and just put a fire hose in their face, you're not giving them a drink the way the way their palate wants to get it. You got to serve it up to people the way that they want to hear it, the way they're ready to receive it. So, any final thoughts?
Well, I look at this as the two lawyers and the bears outside of the tent story. You heard that story before?
No, tell it to me.
Okay, well, two lawyers are camping, and they hear a growl, and they see a bear outside the tent, and one lawyer goes back into the tent and puts on his Nikes, and the other lawyer says, "What are you doing? You know you can't outrun that bear." And he says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you." So the analogy is there is a bear happening out there. It's this demographic cliff, but there are colleges that are putting on their Nikes and they're about to run the race, and there's colleges that are standing still. The bear is still going to have his feast, but he may not feast on you. If you can be innovative enough, if you can find the markets enough, if you can adapt to the change. And it's the whole, for every crisis, there are opportunities. And the people that take the opportunities thrive, and the people that don't get eaten. So I think.
No, good stuff.
Yeah.
And, one thing the article referenced, I didn't talk about it because we did a whole, segment on it before, but Hechinger Report has come up with some real detailed financial analysis of whether or not your college or the colleges you're considering are in trouble or not. And they break them down into 4 categories. And we do encourage people to look at that. You can just go to HechingerReport.com and you'll see it on the front page. Or if you go to our website, yourcollegebounkid.com, under the resources tab, hit websites, we have a link that takes you straight to that section so that you can really take a look at the colleges that you're considering, or if you're a current college student, the college that you're at, and you can see what their financial health looks like. Because every time we do a segment like this, we get emails where people are like, how do I know whether the schools I'm looking at are about to either close or merge or have to lay off massive faculty, and this is the best tool I've seen out there. There's some others as well. We've shared several others in the past. But that's the best resource I've seen. And so I encourage you to check it out, get a sense of the financial health of the schools that you are considering, if you're a prospective, or the school that you're at if you're a current.